All right, well, let's get another question here, Jim. This is about another WWE-related program. This question was sent to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com from Justin. On the recent Broken Skull sessions, Chris Jericho was talking about his new book that lists all of his matches. As he says, he wrote down every one and has also written down the date, the amount of money he earned for each one, and there's a period there. And the amount of money he earned for each one. He claimed on the interview that no one else has that, referring to him being the only wrestler to keep said records. Obviously, Jim has similar records too. Does Jim know of any other wrestlers that kept such records?
Well, almost everybody to some extent, because originally I was told when I first got in the business to keep a date book, because that's the way the guys kept track of, obviously, especially in the days, and if a star was working more than one territory because he was a big name, or he was flying out for shots, or even just you got in a territory, they give you a booking sheet, you put it in your book, and that's the same place you record your mileage, which is a tax deduction, and money you spent on a hotel or food along the way or whatever, all your expenses. And then, that was standard for most guys that paid their taxes, to record that information in their book so they'd know where to go, when to be there. If it was a different building, they'd make a note of that, and their road expenses. A lot of guys then would go further and they'd, write down the match they were in, and a lot would put their finish down. Of course, year by year after that book became, no good, sometimes guys would throw them away. Sometimes guys would throw them in a drawer and you'd find them years later. I have Black Panther Jim Mitchell's date book from 1946 and 47, where it had been in the trunk when they found his house, when John Cosper had been writing that book. And even then, he didn't write down his matches or his finishes, but it was all of his road expenses and dates and places that he was booked at. And then guys like Johnny Weaver were famous. Weaver, in his book, he wrote his finishes down and he had all of his books. So, and I think actually he had just one book supposedly that he put finishes in. But the point is, he had at one point in time, who knows whatever happened to it, written down a book or books with all the finishes he ever did in the Carolinas, all those years of being a top guy. So that way people would come to him and all the time ask him, "Hey, Johnny, give me a finish." Well, he'd do it off the top of his head. But guys who took the business more seriously would do shit like that. So when I started, I was writing down, my business and road expenses and the bookings, but I also started putting what match I was involved in and who went over, what the finish was. And then obviously guys wrote down as part of their business information what payoff they got for that town. But I always wanted to know the house too. And a lot of times, guy, what was the house? Oh, it was $12,000. Well, they would hear that and they'd get their check later on. They wouldn't write the $12,000 down. They'd just write down their payoff, and they'd say, that was a shitty payoff for a $12,000 house or whatever. But I like to keep track of the overall business. And, that's how I started doing my books, and I did them through, the time I managed the Midnight and then Smoky Mountain. And then I've got the booking books from the WWE and then OVW. And I must admit, over, the last however many years, when I've just started doing a shot here, a shot there, I didn't bother to write it down, or a match at a fan fest or whatever, because it wasn't applicable to me anymore as far as business. I probably screwed myself on some books I'll eventually write, not knowing the exact dates and number of things over the last 15 years. But point is, it was great of Chris to do it. He's not the first one to do it. He's one in the upper echelon of completists over a period that long, and to have everything, it's not unheard of. but it makes a good book. That's why I did the Midnight Express book.
I was about to say, it could be a pretty interesting book, though.
It was when I did it for the Midnight Express.
Yeah, other than the fact that Chris will rate all of his stuff as being great, even when it wasn't.
Well, no, now, but hold on. He's not like giving those matches star ratings or anything, is he?
We don't know yet. We'll see. I wouldn't put it past him.
If it's a recounting of his events and here's the dates and the places and whatever, but even I did not. I just reported the facts and happenings of the matter and didn't rate whether it was great unless somebody else said that.
Maybe you should do that. Reclaim your star rating system and just start rating your own matches.
I don't have time.